done in European films, but I think she's returning to her work on masculinity in contemporary Italian cinema today in order to talk about manhood in a time of crisi, masculinity in contemporary Italian film.
Thank you, Danielle, and I hope in a way I can bridge some of the issues certainly that are brought up by Catherine's paper on image and masculinity in Italian film, but also I think some of the issues of economics that Jessica brought to the fore in her paper. And I'm also going to try to cut a little bit as I go, because I really hope we will have time for discussions, bring all of these papers together. The past decade in Italian popular cinema has brought to the fore contrasting images of Italian masculinity that often belie a rigid delineation of gender roles. And from a film scholar's perspective, one of the most interesting developments has been the manner in which men increasingly become the protagonists of domestic melodramas, a genre that is traditionally reserved for female subjects. This paper looks at representations of masculinity in films that represent male protagonists in periods of emotional crisis. In these films, men become positioned as the tragic figures in melodramatic narratives, wherein romantic relationships are inflected by larger issues of economic upheaval. These films dramatize the destabilizing of gender roles in contemporary Italy as experienced by men, changes inflected by the increasing presence of women in the business world, the rise of ethnic and sexual pluralism in Italian social life, and the global economic crisis. And I want to look closely at two recent films by Silvio Soldini, Giorni e Nuvole and Cosa voglio di più. These films highlight nuanced male experiences of romantic, sexual, paternal, and professional life. And while in general Soldini's films concern themselves with chronicling the intimate details of everyday existence, the tone and focus of these two films charts new territory for the director. Soldini, at least internationally, is best known for romantic comedies such as Pane e Tulipani and Agata and Tempesta, both of which focused on female protagonists. But these two films signal a shift towards a balanced emphasis on male and female characters, as well as departing from the comedic magical realism of those female-centered romances. Instead, these two films investigate melodramatic situations filmed in a documentary style, so that includes the use of handheld camera, jump cuts, a spare use of music, and a focus upon banal moments captured in real time. These formal aspects, I argue, are Soldini's idiosyncratic interpretation of the melodrama, in which gestures and images are emotionally freighted, even when presented within a starkly realistic vision of the mundane routines of modern life. What I would also like to highlight are the ways in which the emotional turmoil of the protagonists, and specifically the male characters, is conditioned by their economic status and by a loss of identity in the work sphere. In Giorni e Nuvole, a marriage is placed in crisis by the loss of a husband's job. Michele and Elsa are a well-to-do, middle-aged Genovese couple who, at the start of the film, are celebrating Elsa's recent laurea in art history. After an evening of lavish celebration, Michele reveals to Elsa that he has been unemployed for 2 months, and has in fact been hiding the fact that it was pushed out of the company he founded by his two business partners. It appears Michele has been forced out because he opposed mass layoffs and moving production outside of Italy. His personal crisis is thus precipitated by his inability to adapt to a new era of global economics. What becomes evident is how the structure of this couple's life has rested upon the financial security they've always taken for granted. And we become witness to a series of decisions that indicate there's increasing spiral away from their social class. First, they must renounce dinners out with friends, then they lay off their cleaning woman, they sell their boat, and eventually they lose their well-appointed apartment in central Genova. The immediate effect of this is that the couple begins to lose their established roles within the relationship. Elsa becomes the breadwinner, whereas Michele becomes incapable of finding adequate employment. He also begins to take on traditionally female roles. He is responsible for cleaning the house, doing the shopping, and even tucking his wife in at night when she is returned home exhausted from a long day's work. Yet Michele does not easily adapt to this new domestic model. And the way that Soldini treats domestic space tells of his physical and emotional discomfort with this altered status. Moreover, by focusing on the male presence in the traditionally female realm of the household, Soldini's films appropriate a locational trope of the domestic melodrama and re-articulate it in male terms. As Laura Mulvey notes in her analysis of classical Hollywood melodramas, quote, "The space of the home can relate metaphorically to the inside space of human interiority, emotions, and the unconscious," unquote. In Giorni e Nuvole, this is made most evident when Michele and Elsa leave their spacious apartment in central Genova to move to an uninspiring working-class high-rise on the periphery. Eventually, Michele does start to take satisfaction from manual labor. He begins renovating his apartment and then doing odd renovation jobs in the apartment complex with the help of 2 former employees. But when those 2 other men find permanent work elsewhere, and Michele is faced with undertaking these tasks alone, he suffers an anxiety attack, fleeing from the scene and running home to hide in his bedroom. Michele's impotence is displayed as a retreat from the public into the private world of the home. Here we see him huddled in a fetal position in the shower, vulnerable in his nudity, and of course the wife is fully clothed. And here he hides in his bedroom, refusing to go out and even failing to attend job interviews. While the image of the man as constricted by interior space may conform to a standard dialectic in which outside space is coded male and indoor space is coded female, it is important to note how Michele's new identity has made him equally at odds with the exterior world, which is seen in the way that he negotiates the city of Genoa. The city itself is a canvas on which the narrative of the film is depicted, and throughout the film, Soldini alternates scenes of the private melodrama as it unfolds with wide shots establishing shots of the cityscape, both at sunrise and sundown. Michele, however, has difficulty in negotiating this exterior space, which we see in moments of desperation when he becomes a messenger boy, constantly referring to a map as he attempts to traverse the city by motorbike, lost in an increasingly alien public world. Michele's demoted status is made complete when Elsa decides to take on not just 1 but 2 jobs. She works daytimes at a call center and in the evening at a shipping company, a harsh reminder of Michele's lost career in the sailing industry. As Michele searches vainly for work opportunities, Elsa gains in independence. Her newfound economic viability directly challenges their relationship, and she falls into a brief sexual affair with her boss at the shipping company, suggesting that female independence in employment also threatens women's emotional dependence on their male partners. 3 years after Giorni e Nuvole, Soldini directed Cosa voglio di più, and its English title, Come Undone, concentrates on the emotional effects of a passionate love affair. And as perhaps you noted in the original publicity, it focuses upon the nude bodies of the 2 protagonist actors, Pier Francesco Gravino and Aldo Borbato. But the original title in Italian speaks closer to the theme of the film, the malaise of 2 ordinary people with stable yet unsatisfactory personal lives. At the center of the narrative are Domenico and Anna, young adults in committed relationships who find themselves increasingly drawn towards a passionate sexual affair with each other that leads to profound emotional attachment. But perhaps the real innovation of Cosa voglio di più is the manner in which Domenico and Anna's relationship is constantly conditioned by economic factors. The title of the film is really a question. Both characters ostensibly have everything they would want before they meet each other. And it is not self-evident that Domenico would be unhappy with his family. His wife is attractive and sympathetic, and he is obviously a devoted father. Yet the constraints of Domenico's precarious financial existence become interwoven with his domestic life and with his role as head of the household. Again, Soldini presents the man's impetus for escape via social-spatial metaphors. Domenico is often seen constrained by the limitations of his domestic space, in moments that are often reinforced by the acoustic chaos of his wife's complaints, his baby crying, and his daughter's incessant pestering. Even his lovemaking with his wife is in the constricted space of a kitchen chair. These scenes contrast with the surreal spaces of the motel where Domenica and Anna have their sexual encounters, The kitsch decor befits an establishment that rents rooms by the hour, for it's sort of complete with mirrors and red velvet curtains and oval-shaped bathtub. However, the motifs of these interiors, with the circular shapes of the bed and the bathtub, and the unlimited confines of the room itself, suggest both the freedom as well as the circular nature of his passion with Anna. This privileged location is thus the visual opposite of the rectangular and confined vision of Domenico's apartment, again establishing for the viewer a sense of the repressive limitations of domestic life. Like Michele in Giorni Mule, Domenico was adrift in a changing workforce. He originally immigrated to Milan to help his brother at his newsstand, but now works as a self-described factotum for an unsympathetic boss in a catering company. A brief interaction with his brother shows that how he has moved from a traditional but poorly paid arena of family-owned business to a precarious and alienating position in a competitive marketplace. At the catering company, too, we see him undertake the difficult task of requesting an advance from his unsympathetic female employer. And this is an echo as well of a previous film, Uomo che Ama, in which Fabino's character was often in contrast with his sharp-tongued female employer. Thus, we are given the impression that hardworking men are struggling in a business world in which middle-aged women are excelling while also condescending to their male inferiors. It is evident that this dissatisfaction with his professional career is a primary factor in Domenico's pursuit of Anna, for we see him contact her immediately following moments of extreme frustration or disappointment, such as when he is derided by his employer or when his estranged brother insults him by offering him a loan. Interestingly, the female character is apparently not under the same economic constraints as her male counterpart, and in fact, Anna's emotional independence, because she is the one who eventually ends the affair, also parallels her superior economic status. In Domenico's case, however, we are treated to the minute details of a precarious financial existence that is all too real. Domenico's wife begs him to get an advance at work. She is struggling to take care of the children while also working a part-time job herself. Domenico's financial situation directly influences the love story that is at the center of the film's narrative. My feedback. The viewer becomes sharply aware of the sacrifice at stake when Domenico must pay €50 for the few hours at the motel where he and Anna have their weekly assignations. It is apparent that this affair will not just affect Domenico's tense relationship with his wife, but his spending will influence his family's financial well-being as well. The moments of splurge become even more poignant for the realization of the economic sacrifice they represent, such as when Domenico takes Anna to a fancy nightclub for dining and dancing, and at the end of the film when they take a weekend trip to Tunisia, and we see Domenico bartering with local vendors for flowers and jewelry for Anna and for a gift for his daughter. And I want to show a very brief, if I can, clip from this sort of concluding last hurrah in this relationship which takes place in Tunisia in one of their last conversations. The volume is at the maximum.
Per questo viaggio, per quello che hai speso, per che c'è.
Cosa c'è inoltre?
Oggi mio capo si è sposato per la terza volta.
13 volte.
Sì.
Sempre di quello si finisce a parlare.
Per forza.
That's the end of that. But quiet scene, obviously. But what we can see from that already is that this relationship and the freedoms are necessarily limited by the economic circumstances in which they find themselves. And she says, I'm afraid. He says, yes, I am too. I want you, but I don't want my children to suffer for anything. And she says, I feel guilty because of everything you spent for this trip. And then she notes, my boss just got married for the third time. And she says, well, he said he has money. And in the end, it all comes down to that. What is also interesting to me about this that final section is the location shift to the Middle East, which is an odd transition from the Milanese setting of Kosovo Dipiu. In Kosovo Dipiu, North Africa takes on this significance of escape and romance. And this begins in the very early part of the film, in which Anna and her co-workers give to a retiring co-worker, this woman, a trip to Egypt. And Domenico himself, who is the waiter at the party for the co-worker, mentions that the chef who catered it was Egyptian. And then later in the film, when Anna meets her co-worker again, she is flush with this new romance of a man that she has just met at a camel ride in Luxor. So this romantic fantasy of the Occidental tourist it sort of feeds in, I believe, into this desire for departure. And travel and journeys, of course, are the most obvious means of departure from the mundane routine of daily existence, which is really what these two characters are trying to escape through their relationship with each other. But the emphasis these films place on foreign desire is woven into the examination of Italian social and economic life. Laura Rascoli, has observed a trend in Soldini's films in which characters are constantly journeying from their place of origin to a search for the exotic other, exploring their binary opposites in an effort to quell some personal satisfaction, be it with lovers, jobs, or family. And Cosa voglio di più e Giorni Nubile continue this theme and locate it in terms of the foreign destination. And in Giorni Nubile, Michele and Elsa, in fact, mispronounce a trip to Cambodia in light of their newfound financial difficulties. And this is referred to over and over. It's also reflected in their taste for exotic artwork, rugs, and furniture, the discussions of recent trips they made to Tunisia, Brazil, and even their sailboat is named Izmir after the Turkish port city. The loss of their economic status thus entails a renunciation of this aspect of their lives. And at his lowest point, Michele, in a fit of rage, sells off most of the objects that the couple has acquired during their various excursions abroad. This theme of escape speaks of a desire to extricate oneself from one's own emotional and financial difficulties. But in a larger sense, it denotes a profound sense of insecurity, sort of a domestic discomfort in a sense, an insecurity with the progress of life in contemporary Italy, and as I would argue, with the role of men within it. Italian sociologists have recently undertaken analyses of these shifts in masculine identities. Hopefully film scholars are following suit. And as Chiara Saraceno notes, per molti uomini si sono indebolite le tradizionali forme di definizione della mascolinità adulta moderna, il lavoro ragionevolmente prevedibile, una ovvia condizione di preferenza nel mercato del lavoro e nella sfera pubblica. What is notable is that amongst the other factors that affect masculine hegemony, the predominant element that she cites resides in the field of labor. In fact, Saraceno and others have noted that while more traditional models of employment may still hold true for Italian men at a certain age, for the younger generation of Italian males, future stability in the marketplace is hardly assured. This changing economic environment and its effect on social and cultural models can result in gender shifts, some of which can be experienced as positive, which is witnessed in a growing number of men who are taking on a larger role in caregiving of children. However, what Soldini's films bring to light is how the precarious economic situation of the middle-class Italian male threatens his ability to maintain his relationships growing themes indicate a culture that is in a period of transformation. But as Michele says in the very last moments of Giorni Nuvole, as he lies next to his wife in a moment of reconciliation, I thought that things could go back to the way they were, but it's not true. I realized it's a mistake to look back. Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you very much for another fascinating paper, which I think draws to a fascinating session in which the links between political and economic crisis and their intersection with globalization in Italy and the impact that they may be having on different forms of masculinity. It really is very productive, and these papers offer a substantial move forwards, I think, in terms of studies of masculinity in the Italian context. I'm sure there are lots of questions, so I think we can take 10 minutes for those. So, would anybody like to start?